In the next panel discussion on roads logistics, increasing efficiency and moving towards a seamless supply chain, our panel of experts will discuss the role of technology in this domain, growing opportunities in the space of multimodal logistics, collaboration between roads and railways for seamless supply chain, etc. I would like to invite Jagannarayan Padmanabhan, Practice Leader and Director, Transport and Logistics, CRISIL Infrastructure Advisory, to moderate the discussion. Welcome, Mr. Padmanabhan.
Welcome one and all for the panel discussion on roads logistics, increasing efficiency and moving towards a seamless supply chain. It is a stated objective of the government to bring down the logistics cost from the current around 14% to 8% or lower, matching the world standards. To that extent, multiple initiatives has been taken by the government. Also, there is significant investments that has been done by the private sector and specifically by the e-commerce players. We are in the age of hyper-local delivery with multiple partners vying to deliver within the 10 minutes in the FMCG side using ghost warehouses. The role of technology cannot be more pronounced than now. Also, if you were to look at the industrial manufacturing sector, there are multiple challenges we are facing, be it the bulk cargo or container cargo, and there is greater need for both roads and railway sector to seamlessly connect with each other. And the need of the hour is development of a multimodal logistics ecosystem. To cover all of this and more, we have an esteemed set of panelists. We have Mr. Sudhendu Sinha, Advisor, Infrastructure and Connectivity, Electric and Mobility, NITI Aayog. We have Mr. Karunakaran Sathianathan, Independent Director, National Highways Logistics Management Limited. And we have Mr. Akhilesh Srivastava, representing the World Economic Forum. I'll quickly jump into Mr. Sinha. Sir, one of the toted ones of the scheme in terms of the government is the whole Gati Shakti master plan. And it is not just a master plan, it's an integration of all the interministerial committees coming together and working seamlessly. Could you just throw us light and how do you think that's going to bring down the overall logistics sector cost?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jagannarayan. You see, Gati Shakti is going to be one of the most significant initiative of the government in the spectrum of infrastructure administration, let's call it, because it is going to affect the entire cycle life of infrastructure planning, design, implementation, monitoring, whatever you call it. So in the entire spectrum of project administration, Gati Shakti is going to be the game changer. In the same way, as today now we realize that what is the importance, what is the potential of Aadhaar, that we realize today, that how that benefit transfer and all the initiatives are being gradually linked to it. Similarly, is the importance and the strength of Gati Shakti. So Gati Shakti is basically a framework. It is a template. It is a kind of, let's call it a soft frame, that is all, in which everything of a particular project, let's say from the conception and design stage till the end, to the entire life cycle, that project can be taken forward on it. So this is what the Gati Shakti. Now Gati Shakti came because we saw, rather the Prime Minister or Honorable Prime Minister could himself sense it, that our projects have got something endemic. Endemically, they suffer from time and cost overruns. That needs to be corrected, because then probably the whole fund, the whole intended delivery of a particular project it gets dissipated once the time and cost overruns start over a period of time. So how to arrest that thing? Number one. Number two, how a particular project should be a government all project. It should not be of a particular department, of a particular body, of a particular institution or an authority. It should be entire government initiative, if at all it is being taken on the government front. If it is on PPP, then the government as well as the private industry players are involved into it. How it has to be taken the whole one go. So that is what was the second intention. That is to say that the department should not be working into silos. They should break those silos. It should be an integrated, convergent approach towards a particular project. So this was the idea behind Gati Shakti. And as I told you, this is going to be the biggest game changer in post independence India, rather in this century, in the world of project administration in India. Yes.
Excellent. I think that's a great start and giving a good perspective on this. If I can get Mr. Karunakaran onto this. Sir, when the two key ministries, I mean, specifically on the logistics part, if you were to look at it, it is the overall, or let's say two or three of them, which will be the road, the railways, the aviation part, which is there, right? And then we are now talking about then the whole multimodal logistics part of it. So, and NHLML is in the forefront of developing these multimodal logistics park. So, how important are these multimodal logistics park for giving a boost to the country's supply chain? And how do you think NHI is going to help in this regard?
Thank you, Mr. Padmanabhan. May I step back a little with your permission and permission from my co-panelists. You have given the background of what we are discussing today very well, and Mr. Sudhendu Sinha has explained what Gati Shakti is going to achieve in that background. I believe most of us will agree that for India to become the economic superpower that it aspires to be in the near future, not distant future. I mean, I'm not talking of 2050. We don't know who all of us will be there in 2050. I would look forward to a 10 year, shall we say, time horizon. And for that to happen, it has to become the manufacturing hub of the world. You will agree that along with improving the ease of doing business, on which the government has taken a lot of initiatives, we can achieve this provided we create world-class logistics infrastructure with the lowest possible logistics cost. So that is the basic purpose which has to be kept in mind when we talk of all these initiatives that the government is taking, various departments are taking, and ministries are taking. And Mr. Padmanabhan, as you are aware, it's not just the 3 or 4 ministries. In fact, it is roughly about 13 ministries which are involved, in setting up various logistics infrastructure and regulations for logistics across the entire spectrum of logistics. Now, the government is taking a number of steps to achieve, this reduction, this infrastructure creation, and also the reduction in cost. One of them is, of course, creation of multimodal logistics parks, in which NHLML has been given the responsibility to create 35 multimodal logistics parks. That's the initial, shall we say, list of multimodal logistics parks which have been approved by the cabinet. Now, as we go along, we will realize that this is not the entire list, and we may need more multimodal logistics parks. Now, why multimodal logistics parks? Basically, I think one of the issues that has been plaguing the multimodal logistics business is the lack of proper multimodal logistics terminals. And while the container train operators have struggled over the past 10-15 years to create multimodal logistics parks, they have neither been able to achieve the scale, nor have they been able to achieve the economics which will make it, which will enable the logistics cost to be actually reduced. So we have ended up with a lot of ICDs, a lot of CFSs, a lot of container terminals, and private freight terminals for bulk cargo also. But all these are disjointed, and they do not result in the synergy which will result in lower logistics costs. This is where the projects which are being created and will be constructed for NHLML will be very different. These are large in size, so there is scalability. You are looking at a long time horizon of roughly 45 years of concession period. The NITI Aayog has already approved the concession agreements for these. So there is a framework which is already in place, and we are looking at world-class facilities with KPIs for each of these facilities, which will ensure that the users will get world-class experience at the lowest cost. Once these become a network of multimodal logistics parks, I'm sure there will be a revolutionary change in the way logistics business is done across the country.
No, you're absolutely right. I think getting in scale, in fact, freight villages is what sometimes they call them in Germany.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just not a park. It's like a village, and the whole ecosystem needs to come through. And then you're absolutely right at the start in terms of the whole manufacturing sector needs the boost, and then this is in a way a stepping stone or an aid in getting that across. And overall, the margin reduction that I talked about at the initial, getting down, it'll go straight into the individual private sector balance sheet. If you're able to get that 14% to 6%, the product becomes quite competitive. So thanks for setting that up as well in talking to us. So when we are talking about scale, when we are talking about reach, I want to get Mr. Akhilesh here in the conversation. This can't be done without the private sector participation, right? So what is it that the private sector can be expecting from this whole Gati Shakti part of it, and how do you think that they can be participate in this, not in the shorter term, but even in the long term perspective? Any thoughts on that, sir?
Absolutely fantastic question, Mr. Padmanabhan. And as our previous panelist has already elaborated and told about the Gati Shakti as a whole and what's going to be the logistic, how beneficial it is. Let me go back a little. What is the ambition? Mr. Sinha has already explained why this Gati Shakti has been formed. What is the vision behind it? That's breaking the silos and bringing all infrastructure development, linking on a single platform. That's called Gati Shakti. But before coming to the question, how is going to be helping the private players in a PPP model, let me explain first that Gati Shakti is it's a continuous. The government of India is continuously trying to improve the system. This is third in a series of infrastructure development, if I say a major initiative. First was your National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP we call it. Then they went to the asset monetization pipeline. And this is the third, which is integrating all these things. So it's a grand vision where roughly 110 lakh crore is to be invested into development of infrastructure, which will pave way for India to become a major economic power in maybe in a horizon of 10 years from now. By 2030, we expect the things will be starting showing the results. But considering our previous trend in the infrastructure development, where around 42% projects were over delayed, and some are delayed beyond the expected timelines, and I think around 5 to 7% projects we do not know the completion date also, when it is likely to complete in spite of years of delay. So these bottlenecks has to be first addressed, and that's why this various GIS layers. I had been fortunate to work with BISEC also, which has created 108 GIS layers, which are the in fact backbone of this PM Gati Shakti program. So, and that's providing the different layers, the availability of raw material, availability of other projects, that's connecting the state department, the local municipalities, everybody is getting connected over that. Now come to the how is going to help the public private partnership. What are the two major ingredients for the private participation? Number one, they want the full transparency. They want to know the moment, for example, if an highway is planned, or the moment it is said that there is going to be highway, there is a lack of transparency and people start buying land around that. The ecosystem tries to develop like that. The participation of the private starts. But here government is on a Gati Shakti. They are creating all the layers. They are linking all the major projects on it. It's a very transparent, it's clear. Now the private people has got the first ingredient done, that they are visibly, they are looking at, these are the 10 years program. These are the places. This is the availability. This is available on the GIS platform. So here is an opportunity. We can develop an ecosystem. We can invest money. We can be a part of that ecosystem and create our own business potentials around these availabilities. This I can demonstrate by an example. When I was implementing FASTag program, we developed a FASTag digital platform like this, where all the toll plazas, all the issuer, FASTag issuer, bank, acquirer, and everybody was built into the ecosystem. And this data was transparently available. Anybody can log into NPCI or IHMCL site and see what is going to happen. The things where this led to at least 50 startups developing around the public-private partnership, who used to facilitate the truck owners, the small truck owners like Wheelsai, Park Plus. They extended it. So when we want to develop, we make a real growth visible on the ground. Without participation for private players, it's literally impossible. Government can lay down a big frame, but then bottom-up approach has to be. And the bottom means the private players comes only when there is a good visibility. So fortunately, and I'm happy that this Gati Shakti is giving the required insight to the investors to look at the what's going to happen. This is the plan, this is the place it is going to be, these are the defense corridors coming up, these are logistic parks are coming up. So in and around the logistic parks, they can develop their own ecosystem of providing some facility, filling those smaller gaps, those voids, and then that becomes a composite development program. Yeah.
Understood. I think what the underscoring point is that is to have a transparent mechanism. I think that all that the private sector wants is a time-bound, definite manner in which, where they are looking at their investments and how that will come through, and there is little hindrance in that kind of an operations. I think very well put, sir. So just coming back to Mr. Sinha, in two aspects for this. One is the whole interministerial coordination, right? To get this up and running and in a very smoothless manner, right? Also, from that part of it, how does this whole Gati Shakti in an operation framework, how does that operate? That the operations are quite smooth, the coordination between the ministries are effective. What is the kind of framework that?
Okay, so as far as coordination is, you rightly said that probably if two principal bulwarks to Gati Shakti, to the success of Gati Shakti can be identified, one is the coordination and second is the technology part of it. So these two are the principal bulwark. You mentioned about the coordination, very rightly said. So a lot of thinking through has gone into it, that how this coordination should be brought about to ensure that Gati Shakti meets its intended objective. So there is a system has been framed with, at the highest level being the group of secretaries being there, or rather the empowered group of secretaries, I would say. And then there are subject matter experts, there are network planning group, and then there are group of directors. So a whole system has been framed whereby this coordination, the element of coordination never misses its site. So that framing has already been done. It has already been done. And as we know that we cannot expect the entire capacity to be available in a substantial way, in substantial strength all the time with government. That is the reason why we have also incorporated, we have brought in laterals from outside. So a lot of laterals are already there. In fact, the subject matter experts, they are just too good. They have been brought into it. So a group of subject matter experts, a group of directors, network planning group is there, and then group of secretaries is there. So the entire system has been laid that how exactly this Gati Shakti will be flowing. It is not only that they have been, the different layers have been identified. The idea is also that we do not opt for a system where the process becomes all the more complicated. So for that, lot of horizontal kind of approvals, that system has been also incorporated. Each layer has been sufficiently empowered so that it can be taken through. And that is how this coordination thing is being kind of attempted to be achieved. You rightly said so. You see, basically on 15th of August last year, Prime Minister had announced Gati Shakti. Now, up till now, of course, now we are going to meet August, majority of tasks, all this paid work has been done. That means the entire contour has been decided. What all small little layers will be there that will be functioning together to bring about this coordination, that has been decided. Initially, what should be the high impact projects that can be immediately onboarded on Gati Shakti, that has been decided. How to create capacity building among different units within the government and outside, that has been decided. And of course, they are also going and approaching the states, that the states also in their own projects, they should also bring it to the Gati Shakti portal. Then the whole kind of, it should not be only a central government's approach. It should be a kind of the entire government, Indian government's approach, that impression could be given. So that work is going on. So a lot of these all initiatives have gone into bringing about coordination. That's one portion. And of course, technology, as we know, that without a very, very solid base of technology, this cannot be taken forward. This Gati Shakti will not, this will not meet its objective. The idea is very simple. It requires a lot of data. I'll give you an example. Suppose from point A to point B, let's say somebody decides to lay down a network, a new road connectivity. I'm giving just an example. That means that he should have the sight that what alternate infrastructure is available, what are the traffic projections, what is the demographic pattern, how many water bodies in between, what is the geological characteristic of that area, what is the so many things you can think of. How many trees will be there, whether there is a reserve forest, not a reserve forest. The Gati Shakti has been so wisely devised that it can go to the extent of identifying precisely that how many trees will have to be cut, kind of thing. And which all agencies, which all approvals are required, what are the enabling provisions attached. So everything has been created, that is from the technology side. It is to be created. It requires that lot of data sanctity has to be there. So multiple sources of data, multiple kind of origin of data, all of them have to be brought into a convergence, and the Gati Shakti framework must have access to each one of them, so that there is always a single version of truth. That is number one. Number two, the data is always a correct data. That is number two. And third is that based on data, on that particular data, the entire planning can be taken forward. So this is how the coordination as well as the technological support to Gati Shakti is being planned and being taken through. Thank you.
Excellent. No, I think you combined two of it very relevant aspects into this. So would do you think also a blockchain kind of an environment would be there out here? Because you talked about whole data sanctity and single point of truth, right? So is that also on cards to kind of get that on board out here?
Yes, Mr. Padmanabhan, it will require all those things, all the what we call the IoT, the deep learning, the machine learning, the blockchain initiatives, all they have to. You mentioned about the freight villages of Germany. You know, they are precisely the best in the world. I mean,
right.
It goes without saying. And if you see that out of some 38, 39 freight villages that they are massive. Except for 3 of them. Each of these freight villages have access to at least 3 modes of transport. So that is the kind of multimodality that they have achieved. So there is a road, railways, and civil aviation, or maybe road, railways, and ports. That is our inland water body. So that is the kind of these urban freight, the German freight villages. That is what they have achieved, and that is why they are iconic. You know, through the innate strength of these freight villages, Germany has been able to bring down their logistic costs substantially, and they have made their goods internationally so competitive. Yes.
Now, on that particular point, it's a good leading point that you gave for me to get Mr. Karunakaran out here in terms of both multimodality and also, I know this can't happen without the private sector being on board, right? So there is that much the government can do. Afterwards, you need to get the whole private sector on board into this. So, sir, what's the role of a private sector out here? Mr. Akhilesh talked about the expectation part of it. And what I'm asking you is the role that the private sector will play in making this whole the Gati Shakti a success.
Yes, I mean in the field of multimodal logistics parks and multimodality, the private sector has already been involved for quite some time in India under various schemes of the government. But as we have all experienced, that has been built into silos, and it has really not been able to move laterally to achieve the kind of scalability as well as the economies that have to be achieved. In the present era, when we are creating these multimodal logistics parks under Gati Shakti, one thing that is happening is what Mr. Sinha mentioned about coordination. Is that, you see, earlier what used to happen, there would be one government agency creating one say ICD, another government agency would create an ICD very close to the same one, with the result that you had a splitting of volumes. There wasn't enough of homework that was done, what Mr. Sinha has also mentioned, where a detailed pre-feasibility study is done. In the case of the multimodal logistics parks which are coming up now, NHLML, which is under the Ministry of Road Transport, also interacts with other ministries, in the sense Indian Railways, the ministries involved for setting up NICDIC, etc., etc. So we are not going to create any duplicate infrastructure, number one. Number two, the infrastructure that is being created after a detailed study of the shall we say, the market demand, the projections for the next 50 years, the kind of infrastructure that will be required to meet those market requirements, and of course the connectivity with the various modes of transport, whether it is railways, the roadways, or waterways, inland water transport, and also civil aviation where it is possible. Now, as far as the private sector is concerned, what NHLML is doing, that it is creating the basic infrastructure for creating these multimodal logistics parks. And in this, the state governments are also involved. So effectively, the state government provides the land, and large land parcels are involved in creating these multimodal logistics parks, upward of 200 acres each. The railways provide the rail connectivity through RVNL, which is what has been tied up by NHLML already, and the NHAI provides the road connectivity, or IWAI will provide the waterways connectivity. So these are the government, shall we say, supports or infrastructure that will get created by the government. After that, once the project, the RFP is issued and the tenders are finalized, the project will be taken up on a PPP mode, and the concession will be given to the private sector for 45 years. Now, this is something which would ensure that the private sector will be able to bring in the required expertise in each area, whether it is managing these multimodal logistics parks, or creating business for these multimodal logistics parks, or eventually making these world-class facilities. They will play a major role, and NHLML or the government agencies or the authority as it is defined in the concession agreement will step back and play a facilitating and supporting role. It will not actually do the business at the multimodal logistics park. While we have asked for the best of technology to be provided, there will also be a system for monitoring what technology is being brought in by the private players, and also as to how it is improving the overall efficiency of the logistics park. The multimodal logistics parks will ultimately be nodes in the entire ecosystem that is getting created for multimodal logistics. And these are important nodes. I mean, not that they will just be nodes. The connectivity that they provide and the scale that they provide will ensure that whatever transportation moves in and out of these multimodal logistics parks is also used efficiently, whether by whatever mode. The ultimate aim would be to create an integrated, synergistic ecosystem which ultimately provides the required reduction in logistics costs. This is something that we are very consciously trying to achieve in the designing of the multimodal logistics parks, in the selection process that we have set into place, and also in the monitoring process which will be there. The monitoring will be not from the perspective of regulation. Let's be very clear. The monitoring will be from the perspective of trying to understand how the efficiencies can be improved and the costs can be brought down even further while maintaining the viability of the private sector. As far as transparency is concerned, due to the decisions which have been taken in the past by NITI Aayog, we are not going ahead with any of these projects without the concession agreements being in place. We are not going ahead with any of these projects unless the land is available to us, because we don't want that the private investor starts investing money and then we are hunting around for land or sorting out issues related to land and clearances related to that. So all that is done in advance, and then the private player steps in with his investment, with his expertise, with his technology, and with his knowledge.
Oh, excellent. I think at the end you summed it up exactly. What is the role that the private sector needs to be, kind of doing across, and heartening to note that the from the government side as well, there is enough step up and walk the talk kind of stuff which has happened in the road sector as well, in terms of getting the whole land up and running, the connectivity being there. So with the ministries, either in different ministries saying that connectivity will be given to that particular point. It will be good, if every producer in India is able to find a place within a 50-kilometer to a 75-kilometer radius from where his or her product can be shipped out, to the export market. And then we have really achieved globalization, and access to market is very efficient in that manner. And then, so the nook and corner of India can get very well covered, and our products can be, be playing in the world arena. So thanks for that kind of a perspective to that. In this context, getting Akhilesh back in the conversation, all of this is going to be happening through technology, right? I think that's the important, and then Mr. Sinha also talked about that being the backbone of how this is going to be getting delivered. So is having one portal for all the logistics services. So it's just not the hard infra which we have been talking about just now, and there have been some conversation even in terms of the soft part of it, in terms of the reach and everything. So from that perspective, is that something that we can be doing? So a portal for all logistics services, so that they also become an enabler in this whole part of it. And services is an important part of the whole ecosystem in getting the both producers and all the intermediaries on board. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Thanks, Mr. Padmanabhan. That's a very good question. Often people ask, is we are centralizing the things too much, or we are focusing only on one portal for all the solutions is going to be correct, or is going to be draconian kind of things. But let me tell you, it's a fantastic decision, because one portal for all logistic services is a brilliant idea. And as people need not to venture to various, go for numerous logistic platforms or the platform portals for the help. if I talk about the from the perspective of what a private player want, I couldn't complete the answer in the last moment. So I'll just take a few seconds to elaborate it further. Basically, whenever a private players want to enter into any system to create, they require only three things. One, they want the transparency and full availability of data. Here, single portal helps a lot. You have a single truth, single source of truth that is telling everything over there. Second, they want consistency in the policy. They do not want the uncertainty around the things are changing every 3 year, 4 year, or every. And a synergy among various departments or the ministries. On the same point, that again comes with a single portal where everything is synergized. So the different ministries, if they want to differ, they cannot differ by force, because there is a single source of truth, single data they have to publish. So the single platform, the Gati Shakti, in fact, forces people to harmonize and synchronize their thoughts, so that what private people desire, that there should be a consistency in the policy making, sunterity clause that automatically comes. And third is the maximum availability of data, so that they can dwell around, they can make their own models which are financially viable. And that's why the private players are going to invest money. We all saying anything that do not attract to the private players to invest money or making big announcement. Ultimately, the ground truth is different. I was just listening, Mr. Sain, Sathianathan, that we are developing multimodal logistic parks, and we are trying to have single connectivity. But unfortunately, the ground reality is different. On Delhi to Mumbai, we are developing Delhi-Mumbai freight corridor by railways. There is already a corridor, existing corridor, which is moving. We are developing a NH, which is between Delhi to Mumbai. There is already part of Golden Quadrilateral. We are also developing another Delhi-Mumbai expressway. And I understand there is a third planning again going on. So many competing facilities we ourselves are creating, and over and above, the states are also creating. The states, Rajasthan is creating one end-to-end state highway with the same infrastructure and facility. Gujarat is creating. So, I mean, so many competing facilities are there. Ultimately, we are investing right now, but 5 years from now or 7 years, when all these are available, these are going to be cutthroat competition. They are not going to be beneficial, in my opinion. So that again reinforces the view that it should be the single platform is a brilliant idea. In fact, it forces. I will further go and suggest NITI Aayog and the policy makers that they should not approve any program unless until it is put through a Gati Shakti, because then they have a clear view that is there any competing facility available, and what if competing facility is going to come. Because I started my talk with the NIP and AMP. These pipelines are the blueprint of the future development for the 5 years or 6 years. So at least those timeline, any projects should not be sanctioned if it is not put into the Gati Shakti pipeline. And the same should go with the states also. They can also have a view. They should not sanction. And even up to the municipal, the local government, which is through which this highway or these logistic things or any infrastructure is passing through, they should also be part of that. They can view those layers, and they should accordingly make their own plan, which comes in their power.
Understood. So I think the larger point is that what is the logistics intensity, right? So the availability of infrastructure at one point could be so significant, and it should not lead to a situation that in another part of the country where the intensity is lesser and you're not actually providing for it. This single portal will.
Yeah, obviously. See, just example, I was giving Delhi, Mumbai. So, I mean, the amount of money which is being invested here in creating so many parallel and competing facility to each other may not be able to recover the cost also in a long run, whereas at the cost of some other part of the country which might have been left out.
Yeah, capital is scarce, so better utilization of that will always get that part of it. Great, sir. I think any closing remarks. I think really the fact end of it. Sinha, any closing remarks? Yes.
I would say that Gati Shakti is going to be a game changer in times to come. Number two, it requires a lot of assistance of the private sector. Rather, I would say that both government and private, they have to work together. Government has got their own skill sets of clearances, approvals, land acquisition. Private people have got their own skill sets, management, commitment, technology, and capital. Both have to go together. That is there. Number three, it requires management does require a single platform for taking it forward. It becomes easy. But as far as the actual positioning of logistic parks, in a special reference to multimodal logistic parks, I would say what Mr. Karunakaran said, that there should be, the nodes. So this should be, what I would suggest is that we should go in for hub and spoke model, where there are specific nodes and there are satellite points that could be assisting them, supporting them together. Other than also, you see that the Honorable Prime Minister, the Government of India has launched a scheme of one product, one district, one product. And this product is both industrial as well as agricultural. The idea is that every district must have that element of competitiveness into them, and they should showcase their strength outside. Similarly, the railway stations, as well as the wayside amenity points on the roadways, they are being taken as a kind of points from where the nearby villages, the nearby communities can showcase their handicraft, their unique products, whatever is there. So that is how this multimodal logistic thing can be taken forward. That is my closing remarks.
Yeah, Mr. Karunakaran.
I think Mr. Srivastava raised a very valid point about certain duplication of infrastructure that is being done. Interestingly, my experience has been different. Our infrastructure, whatever we feel is being created, is actually not that high. Very soon you find, just take the example of NH8 in Gurgaon. When it was created, it was thought that it will solve all the traffic problems of Delhi, Gurgaon. Today, see how congested it is. The fact is that, you see, economic activity and its growth is directly related to creation of infrastructure. The more efficient infrastructure that you create, the better is the economic activity that will move along with it. And so that will create its own demand. The fact is that in India, even today, most of the infrastructure is inadequate for logistics. We need far more infrastructure. Today, look at what is happening to the power stations. The Indian Railways are not able to supply coal because the capacity is limited. So I believe that, you see, all these roads which will come up will eventually see a huge amount of traffic going up. There will be different kinds of traffic moving on each road for catering to different requirements of logistics. Same thing will apply to the interconnectivity with rail when DFCC comes up, as and when it does. I hope it does happen quickly. You will see a lot of change in the way the hinterland gets connected to the ports. So today the hinterland connectivity to, for example, JNPT is really a big challenge because of the time that it takes for a train to reach from TKD to JNPT or from Ludhiana to JNPT. So what I would suggest is that this is just a remark on what Mr. Srivastava said, that I don't think infrastructure is ever going to sort of exceed the capacity requirement or the demand from the industry in India, and it's a good thing because that means that the country is growing, the economy is growing, which is perfectly fine. It should grow. We on the other hand, the people who create this infrastructure, who provide the facilitation, and who also sort of create the regulations which will sort of ensure not so much the regulations but the facilitation environment that has to be created, will also have to remember that we should not have any wasteful expenditure. That point is well taken, and I think that is what Gati Shakti will achieve. Gati Shakti is going to achieve the economies that are expected by ensuring that you create infrastructure in a very intelligent and planned way. Those are my closing remarks, Mr. Padmanabhan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Srivastava, you can do a comeback on your remark for some clarification and also do a closing remark so that we will conclude. Yeah.
It will be appropriate that I gives a few minutes to reply back on those things. I appreciate the points points given by Mr. Karunakaran, but the fact on ground remains different. Mr. Karunakaran, you know it also. I'm not saying that the infrastructure development is anyway is not good for the it's bad or it's excessive infrastructure. The issue is not that. The issue is creating many competing things parallelly. That may not be correct. That money can be, I mean, we can create a better infrastructure. Similar kind of infrastructure creating a number is not going to be. The logistic can be improved if you create more air connectivity. Air cargo can be improved. You can create a cheaper transportation mechanism. Why don't you increase the water connectivity? So there can be. So it's a debatable issue anyway.
Mr. Akhilesh, if you permit me, from a context setting, I think he was coming from a context of the private sector. But if I were just to put it across in the context of, let's say, just on that one. So from a road perspective, we have seen many a times when people have bid for, let's say, national highway projects, suddenly a competing state highway project would come in, which is not told. So from a private sector, that has always been an apprehension that you have a competing facility which is not told suddenly takes away much of the traffic. So I think from that context, even from a state government, so I think from that, so to have a single platform, you capture all of this so that any kind of a mirroring is avoided, which is, I think, is also the overall the intention of the whole part of it.
Exactly.
I think both are, and I think Mr. Karunakaran is talking about a world-class facility. So we are still far away from creating world-class facilities. We are still having smaller parts. So we need to have those world-class facilities. I think both points well taken on board. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Perfectly. In fact, that was you summed up very well. That is what I was saying. Actually, ultimate aim is that only. And here I say that the Gati Shakti is going to will be a very helpful and the single platform, because it will not allow these things to happen, and the competing facility should be in the vertical phase, which improves the logistic, reduces the cost, it improves over the previous one. That's the way we should forward, not in a horizontally creating parallel things, and that's very well possible through single platform. So I appreciate it, and it's a very good move by the government of India. And this will encourage a lot of private participation into creating a good ecosystem to achieve our target of 5 trillion very soon, and maybe 10 trillion economy by 2030, what we envisage.
Gentlemen, we have completely run out of time. Excellent engaging discussion. We talked about the private sector, we talked about technology, we talked about the whole supply chain, getting the whole interconnected. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. I think we conclude this discussion now.
Thank you, Mr. Padmanabhan, for conducting this so very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Padmanabhan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srivastava ji. Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and knowledge on the topic. Now let's move to the last session of the day.